My name is Layla Collins. I'm 29 years old, and for the past 3 years, everyone at Collins and Associates believed I was nothing more than the friendly receptionist who answered phones and sorted mail. What they didn't know was that I owned 49% of the company, a fact I'd kept hidden since my father's death. I watched my stepmother Margaret and half-brother David treat me like hired help, never suspecting that the Collins in our family business referred to my bloodline, not theirs. They assumed my father left everything to his real family. Margaret Collins swept through the marble lobby like she owned the place, which technically she thought she did. Her perfectly coiffed blonde hair bounced as she barked orders at me about rearranging the reception area. "Layla, dear, move those flowers. They're blocking the view of David's new MBA diploma." She gestured dismissively toward my half-brother's framed degree, displayed prominently behind my desk. I smiled sweetly and complied, knowing that same diploma would soon be worthless when the truth came out. David, 26 and fresh from business school, strutted past without acknowledgement, his expensive suit a stark contrast to my modest receptionist attire. The Collins and Associates building stood as a testament to my late father's vision. 20 stories of gleaming steel and glass in downtown's financial district. Dad had built this empire from nothing, starting with a single law practice and expanding into corporate consulting, real estate, and investment management. The mahogany-paneled offices on the upper floors housed partners who'd worked alongside him for decades, while I sat behind the reception desk, watching his legacy unfold around me. Most employees assumed Margaret inherited everything after Dad's unexpected heart attack 3 years ago. They had no idea about the carefully worded will that protected my interests while keeping my identity secret. The mistreatment began subtly after Dad's funeral. Margaret would forget to invite me to family dinners, while David openly questioned why I still worked at the company. "Shouldn't you find your own path instead of hanging around here?" he'd say, not realizing he was talking to a co-owner. They assigned me menial tasks beyond my receptionist duties, cleaning conference rooms, organizing supply closets, even running personal errands. The other employees, taking cues from Margaret's treatment of me, began viewing me as expendable help rather than family. I endured it all, building a case for when the moment was right to reveal the truth about my father's will. 6 months ago, the verbal jabs escalated. Margaret began openly discussing my future at company meetings I wasn't invited to attend. "We need to consider Layla's position," she'd tell the partners, her voice carrying through thin office walls. "She's sweet, but we might need someone more professional at the front desk." David supported her suggestions, adding his own commentary about my limited capabilities and lack of business acumen. They spoke as if I were invisible, a mere obstacle to their grand plans. I documented every slight, every dismissive comment, knowing they were digging their own graves with each careless word. The harassment intensified as Margaret and David grew bolder in their assumptions about my powerlessness. They began making decisions about my employment without consulting me, discussing salary cuts and reduced hours within my earshot. "Layla should be grateful we're keeping her on at all," David told a client, loud enough for me to hear. "Family charity has its limits." Margaret nodded approvingly, adding that they were carrying dead weight, out of obligation to my father's memory. The partners, uncomfortable with the family tension, stayed silent. I maintained my pleasant demeanor while internally preparing for the perfect moment to shatter their delusions of control. Last month, Margaret announced her master plan during a board meeting I was excluded from, but overheard through the conference room's inadequate soundproofing. She'd found a buyer for Collins and Associates, a massive corporate conglomerate willing to pay $300 million for the company. "This is our chance to cash out and start fresh," she told the assembled partners. David and I can build something new without being weighed down by Richard's sentimental attachments. The partners shifted uncomfortably, but the money was too tempting to ignore. They scheduled the final signing for today, assuming Margaret's 51% ownership gave her complete authority to sell. They were about to discover their fatal error. The signing ceremony was planned as a celebration, complete with champagne and photographers to document Margaret's triumph. She wore her most expensive dress, while David sported a new Armani suit for the occasion. The buyer's representatives arrived with briefcases full of contracts, their corporate lawyers flanking the conference table like sentries. Margaret basked in the attention, giving interviews to financial journalists about her vision for the future. The partners gathered nervously, knowing their jobs depended on the new owner's goodwill. As papers were distributed and pens prepared, I quietly took my place at the reception desk, watching the scene unfold through the glass conference room walls. The moment of truth arrived with devastating precision. The head lawyer, a stern woman in her 50s, reviewed the ownership documents one final time before the signing. Her expression shifted from confidence to confusion, then to alarm. "Mrs. Collins," she said, her voice cutting through the celebratory atmosphere, "there appears to be a discrepancy in the ownership structure." Margaret's smile faltered as the lawyer continued. "According to these records, you only own 51% of the voting shares. But there's another significant stakeholder, someone named Layla Collins, who holds 49% of the company and has veto power over any sale or major business decision." The room fell silent as all eyes turned toward the reception desk where I sat, no longer invisible. I stood slowly, smoothing my modest dress as I walked into the conference room with a confidence they'd never seen before. "That would be me," I said, my voice steady despite the thunderous beating of my heart. Margaret's face drained of color, while David's mouth hung open in shock. "I'm Layla Collins, Richard Collins' daughter and co-owner of this company. According to my father's will, any sale of Collins & Associates requires my written consent." I placed a manila folder on the table containing copies of the will, ownership documents, and 3 years' worth of documented mistreatment. "I'm afraid I cannot, in good conscience, approve this transaction given the hostile work environment I've endured under current management." The immediate consequences were swift and merciless. The buyers, faced with an impossible legal situation, withdrew their offer within hours, leaving Margaret and David scrambling to explain the catastrophic failure to furious partners who'd already made plans with their expected windfall. Margaret's authority crumbled instantly as partners realized she'd been operating under false pretenses for 3 years. David's MBA and business plans became worthless overnight. His credibility destroyed by his treatment of a co-owner he dismissed as mere staff. The financial journalists, hungry for a scandal, pivoted their stories to focus on the dramatic family betrayal and corporate deception that had nearly cost everyone millions. Within a week, the company's power structure had completely shifted. The partners, desperate to salvage their positions, unanimously voted to remove Margaret from all decision-making roles and offered me her former position as CEO. I accepted graciously, implementing immediate changes to company culture and policies. Margaret, humiliated and financially ruined by her failed gambit, retreated from public life. While David found himself blacklisted from the business community after news of his behavior spread throughout professional circles. The receptionist desk was removed from the lobby, replaced by a memorial plaque honoring my father's vision and values. I now occupy the corner office that should have been mine from the beginning. 6 months later, Collins and Associates thrives under my leadership, our reputation stronger than ever after surviving the attempted hostile takeover from within. I've promoted several deserving employees who showed me kindness during my time at the reception desk, while those who participated in my mistreatment found their career advancement opportunities mysteriously limited. Margaret still lives in the family house, but only because I chose not to pursue the property claims my father's will would have supported. David works for a small firm across town. His dreams of corporate empire reduced to managing minor accounts and filing paperwork. A fitting reversal of fortune. The greatest satisfaction comes not from their downfall, but from finally living as my authentic self. No more hiding behind a reception desk, pretending to be powerless while others dismissed my worth. My father's legacy lives on through my leadership, his company stronger and more ethical than ever before. The employees who once overlooked me now seek my guidance and respect my decisions. Margaret and David learned too late that underestimating someone based on their position or appearance can lead to spectacular consequences. Their assumption that I was just the receptionist cost them everything they thought they owned, while giving me everything I was always meant to have.